Okay, welcome back, folks. And we are very lucky to have the old guy here, Papa Bear, as I like to call him, otherwise known as my father, following up on the parents editions of the Education Revolution podcast. How uncomfortable are you right now, Dad, on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, I don't know, 8, 9.
It's not bad. My dad likes to tell stories. He's a little bit nervous about the stories I'm going to ask him to tell, but he is a natural born storyteller.
Oh,
So I don't worry. And I know that there are lots of great insights and key takeaways in terms of all of the wonderful influences that he had on me and specifically in my education growing up, that are going to be interesting and valuable to all those listening. I'm going to start the same way I start with most people, Dad, and I want to talk about education, your experience with education, some of the first ones you remember. So when you first went to school, junior school, like, did you start in grade 4? How old were you? 4, 5, 6 years old when you went to school for the first time?
5, I think, believe.
And where were you when you went to school for the first time?
We lived in Richmond.
In Richmond, BC. And was that in Mitchell Island? Was that fair to say like an industrial
Yes.
area of Vancouver?
Yes.
And what did it look like? Did it look like an elementary school that still exists, like these types of schools you see today, or was it a bit different in those days?
Oh, now they're built out of concrete and everything, but this was an old wood building. It was probably, I don't know, total of about 5 miles from our house. And we used to just walk up to the corner of our road was a dead end road. We used to walk up to the end of the street, which is about a half mile, and catch the bus there. And the bus used to take us to school, and it would drop us at the same place on the way back and walk home.
And nobody like took you to school, walked you to the bus stop. You went with your brothers and sisters.
Yes, there was no such thing as the parents walking. They were busy. They were busy with the rest of the family, and we just actually the brother that's 2 years older, a year and a half older, we used to go together a lot to the bus stop.
It's funny. Hey, when you look around at the way that people, like how parents are, we look at the world today and we say, oh, it's so unsafe. Like we have to walk our kids to school, or walking a few blocks is so dangerous for kids. Do you feel like the world is really that much more dangerous? Because I feel like the stories that I hear of you when you were a kid, you didn't really have a lot of supervision.
I don't know. You see today that, who knows how far these kids walk, even like, where we are now in your place in Toronto here, that if you're out walking on the street, you see these parents, they're waiting at a bus stop, like in the background, waiting for the kids to get on the bus and everything. But, times have changed. Like, I mean, and I don't know, not for the better, but, like there was, in the old days, you never heard of much of, kidnapping or somebody taking somebody's child or anything like that. I mean, because everybody knew everybody more or less. And, wasn't just him and I there at the bus stop. There was like 15 others, and they were walking up the street the same way we would and everything. So, it was, but now it's just, I think just the world has changed so much, and there's more bad things happening now than did in the old days.
Well, this level of community that you're talking about, right? It's this idea of community, and everybody knows each other.
Mm-hmm.
If you went to the bus stop and somebody, came up in a car and tried to talk to you, it wouldn't just be your family. It'd be other kids around that'd be like, what are you doing? I don't think so.
And they'd all rally around.
And they'd rally around you.
Yeah, it wouldn't, that wouldn't take place in those days. Like, it wouldn't take place because the others that were there wouldn't let it happen.
Yeah, and this nature of community. This is, you talk about the world changing and how you see community. Like there have been a lot of stories I've heard of in this industrial area of Vancouver growing up where, you'd go outside and as a young person, you'd be playing hockey in large groups and, hanging out or doing other things together in this community setting. Do you think that's something that's changed too in the world that we live in today? Like people don't know their neighbors as much. People's kids don't hang out and play in the streets so much. Why do you think community has eroded in the world we live in?
Probably because I would say today, probably because mostly number one of technology.
Mm.
And, I mean, the kids now stay in their own rooms for 3, 4, 5 hours on these devices and stuff. We had no devices. You'd come home from school and do your errands and stuff, and boom, we'd go out and play. And till the parents would call us in for dinner or till it got dark and that doesn't happen now.
Yeah, isolation through the devices for
And
sure.
I think more so, like and parents didn't worry about the incidents that occur today more so than in those days. It was like and community, everybody like on our street, we used to play like on the whole, we everybody knew everybody on that whole mile, and the kids and all parents and everybody knew whose kids were what and everything, and they all got together and would go to different kids' houses to play and stuff. And we had a larger family than most, and we were really, our house was a central station for a lot of that. So we used to, I had older brothers, older sisters, and stuff. So we had a lot of sports. Our family was really sport minded. So.
Well, it's interesting because you're talking about, nowadays, sometimes you'll hear people talk about like kids get phones so young, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, it's for safety, right? Because my kid's going out, they're coming home on the bus, they're doing a sport, they're in basketball. I want them to have their cell phones so that they can call me, they can text me. You didn't have any cell phones.
No such thing.
You didn't have any way of reporting back. And there would just be an understanding, like I'm going out or I'm going to yell, or they called the landline of someone's house and they'd say, hey, is Sonny there?
Yeah. Did he stop off on the way after getting off the bus or what? But, we used to always more or less, um, when we got off the bus, we'd report home more or less.
First.
So mom and them knew we were home.
First, okay.
And stuff. So anything that occurred after that, they would know if something happened after that. But we'd take off and to a neighbor's place or we're playing outside. I mean, we used to have a basement that was pretty big, and we used to play floor hockey in it and stuff. So I mean, a lot of those activities took place at our own house and blowing out windows like crazy. but it was.
But that level of trust and like this fear, this culture of fear that exists with a lot of parents now that didn't seem to exist back then. But we'll talk about some education that came out of that family experience more in a second. But let's go back to the school itself. What do you remember about the way you were taught? Like, what was the teaching and learning experience for you? Was it very like rote, regimented, sit up straight, be quiet? Or did you feel that there was more flexibility where you went to school, or what did it feel like to go to school as a young person in Mitchell Island?
Just, I don't know, just regular schooling. I mean, it was, the teachers up in the front of the class and teaching a class of, I'd say, approximate 20 kids, maybe 20, 22 kids. And, just going through all the programs and everything. But it wasn't, it was just a regular.
Did you get disciplined a lot? Like when you were like, did everybody have to be quiet and sit up straight and sit in their desks? And was there like the ruler on the hand or anything like you hear about things that used to happen with teachers in the old days?
Yeah, but our family wasn't like that. Like all the boys and us, they didn't step out of line. We would never step out of line at school or something. May do it at home or something, but you wouldn't do it there because the teacher probably give you the pointer across the knuckles or something.
Yeah.
But it was, it wasn't rowdy or anything. Like, it was just
kids paid attention.
Yeah.
And nowadays you see how hard it is for instructors, even at that age, to have classroom management of different children. I don't know what it is that's different. I don't know how much the way your house and you were raised as children impacted how you acted at school. Like, do you feel like you were taught certain values in the home, like respect, this idea of respecting authority or respecting your teacher, and that meant you had to, kind of not step out of line? And do you think maybe now, like, what is the difference now when we have so much rowdiness in younger ages at school? Do you feel like maybe at home they're not getting that same education that you got in your home? Like, what's the connection, do you think, between like how you were taught to behave as a human being at home versus how you actually then translated to behaving at school?
I think we had more communication with parents at home, and the parents now, most of them are working and they don't see the parents. when they come home from school. And but we always had parent discipline, and that just carried on in going to school as if it was, the respect for elders and people in positions, higher positions like teachers and everything, and officers and stuff. You always had respect for them. There was never a point that you disrespected.
Yeah, that you thought you were more important than them, or that you thought you could,
No, we always had basic principles that started at our
and
house.
it started at the house, right?
Absolutely.
Because this is where I think a lot of instructors and teachers nowadays in the world of teaching and learning, we're trying to instill principles, but if they're not happening at home, like if at the home, if the child is given free reign to do what they want and they're told that they're the center of the universe and that their needs are more important than everyone's needs, it's very difficult all of a sudden to bring them into an environment where there's a community.
3 times as hard as how when we had it, because they got so many distractions. And now you say, like, the parents don't discipline them, and I mean it would be like terrible
It can
today.
be very difficult for
Very difficult
instructors today.
and then they never had those principles when they went into school.
Exactly.
So
And
they
then if we're supposed to teach them those principles, but then they're not reinforced,
right where that's yeah.
and it ends up being in this one little space where we're trying to teach people to share and respect space, or have, that everyone's needs matter. And then what was the role nowadays? Another emphasis that we see a lot of, and I don't know if these are all connected, but this idea of play and creativity, like in the world of education now, especially young people education, because we're still focused on, you going to school as a young person. They're, this idea of arts-based and creativity and imagination is playing a big role in what we think we want to be encouraging in our students over and above subjects like math and science. What do you remember about the emphasis on those types of topics when you went to school? Were they emphasized, or was it just the straight kind of hard topics of math, science?
I mean, the options were always there, but I think it was more structured. Like, this is, science class, this is social studies, this is mathematics and stuff, like that. Then choice, more structured. And
so were you given opportunities to express yourself creatively and do art in the school that you went
you
to?
could if you wanted to, but I wasn't the greatest artist in the world. And it still carries today. And but and there, don't forget now, that's me. But the kid next to me, he was great at art. So maybe he pursued those avenues of artistry, and we were just myself. We were there just more or less just for the basic education, and and let things fly after that. We're young. We're only in grade 4.
What about sports? Because sports is a version of play and creativity, and it seems as if sports played a big role for you and your family. Was that something that you felt was integrated into schools? Like, were you on sports teams at school as well?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What do you think were some of the main takeaways? As you know, I was a basketball player, and team sports taught me a lot when I was in high school and the younger grades. What do you think some of the key lessons? Education is everywhere, right? We talk about these hard subjects, math, science. What do you think of the things you learned by being part of a sports team? Because you also coached sports for decades. So you obviously value it as an educational process.
Yes.
What are the things that you learn in sports and team sports specifically?
Oh, like to get along with your teammates and stuff. And, and I think that plays a big part in their lives as to respect. And, I always had good respect from all the, teams I've ever coached and stuff. And I've never, like, how can I word it? And I think it helps for the child himself to grow when you're in teams and stuff. It's not all about you, it's about your teammates and stuff, and to get along. And I think team sport is, you can't start it early enough, and you can't, quit it late enough, more or less. So I think you're always learning, and you're always teaching, and it comes home to pay big dividends.
Yeah, like skills, the tangible skills you're talking about, this idea of collaboration, that they have to work together when they're literally on the field. You have to work together, but then also you win together, you lose together. And so you have to be resilient. Like you learn resilience through team sports. And that understanding of like in that kind of space, you're kind of simultaneously through interacting with the team in that way, growing as an individual. And those are lessons that carry with them, that young people can carry with them.
Absolutely.
Into, again, setting principles. Like also these other basic principles that we struggle for now, Dad. Like it's so hard to get university students to show up on time and to manage their time. And even things like showing up for practice. Do you have everything you need for practice? Well, you're missing this. Well, you missed 2 practices. You can't play in the game. Like those are very specific life skills.
And they're taught those, like in team play. Like you missed 2 practices. Okay, and there's another fellow that hasn't played. He's going to play those 2 practices. You're going to sit because you missed those 2 practices. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. And he could be your best player. Doesn't matter. If you're not practicing going by the rules, then it comes back to bite you.
And this idea of nowadays, there seems to be a little bit of this like making more and more accommodations for people, like, and I don't personally think it's like letting them off the hook. This level of responsibility, we hit a lot of this idea of responsibility. This was a very strong story or narrative in our house growing up that you and Mom both shared, was that you have to take responsibility for your life, for your actions, for what you do. And in team sports, by teaching them in that way, that you made this, whatever that was, maybe you were sick, maybe you missed it because of that, maybe your dog did eat your homework, I don't know, maybe, but there are still consequences to things. Like I feel the world, like there's no consequences for people really anymore.
I mean, look at the other example. Say the kid missed 2 practices. Okay, we don't know the reason. Say the kid missed 2 practices, and then and then that goes on, and say that 3 weeks later he misses another couple because nothing happened in that first one. You said, "Oh, it's all okay. Leave the status quo. You'll be fine." But you're not trying to be mean. You're trying to teach them the values that you can't do that, and you have to be fair to the rest of the team stuff. And I think that it's so valuable that I think it rubs off so much on kids, and they learn from those sporting team. Being on sporting teams, I think, helps kids immensely.
And that's part of
life, period.
These skills, these are life skills. And so being on sports and practicing sports and being on team sports, as well as the education and values and principles that you got in the home, probably really influenced how you behaved in the school setting and the responsibility you took in the school setting.
Absolutely. And then, just like you would, if I'm coaching a team and my team member is arguing with the umpire, that's a no-no. And we explain to him, if there's something to say to the umpire, I will do it. You will not talk to the umpire and communicate with him. And because, it just comes back to bite you. And if we do never, ever show disrespect to umpires or coaches. Half of them are just volunteer people that are helping us, helping you, helping me to grow. And so you just don't do that.
Well, communication, emotional regulation. Again, emotional regulation is something we continuously work on in our family. We'll keep working on it. We do have Indian, we are South Asian, so we have to do maybe more work than some other people on that fiery side of us. But that's also things that happen, because I remember in team sports when I was so sad, you lost and you'd be so sad, and then you don't want to shake their hands. You'd be so angry or something, and you don't want to show respect to that team.
Very disrespectful,
right? And so you have to do these things and model these things, and so you're learning communication and emotional regulation in that way as well. In the school system itself, what did you? So again, there was a very strong emphasis in our house that school is our responsibility, that school was a job that we had to complete, that was our responsibility. What to you was the reason for that? Like, what was the outcome of school? Like, why is school important to you? Like, when you were saying that to us as kids, like, this is important, school is important, it's your job, you have to focus on it, it's your responsibility. What did you think the outcome of school was that was so important? That's why we had to focus on it so hard.
Well, you have to learn. I mean, if you're not, that's number one. You have to learn. If you're not in school learning, then how you're going to help yourself. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And grow from that, right? I mean, you have to be disciplined within yourself, and of course, those all start from home at a very young, early age. And then I'm lucky, my wife and I, we both like emphasize school as number one. As the kids were growing up, because we always said, listen, if you get a good education, my quotation was like, if you get a good education and a good high paying job, you can be self-supporting. And you have to be self-supporting. You have to look at it that way.
And I do think for you in particular, there was this connection, as there is for most people around the world, that it's not just learning for the sake of learning. It's learning because learning sets you up to get the job that will pay your bills.
Correct.
Now, how much of that story and that feeling behind the value of education and because I'm telling you now, some people now in the world, they don't see the connection. Hey, like some people think they don't have to go to school to get a job. So they are like, I go to school for maybe a short amount of time. I definitely don't need to go to higher education. I definitely don't need to go to university, right? I just need to get the job. The job is the thing. So if you're saying that the one of the main purposes of education is to get that high paying job, what if I can get the high paying job and I don't go to school? What would be the value of the learning in and of itself outside of the job for you? Because there are other skills and things that happen from learning that are not necessarily the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Well, just growing up in your life and life lessons as you grow. You can't just say, oh, okay, I'm going to get this job. This is a high paying job. Pick up my lunch bucket, and that's the way it's going to be. That's your life for the next 40 years. You got your lunch bucket, you're going. If you want to better yourself, you never stop learning. And, you take education as far as you as an individual want to and work at it, and you always, that's one thing, the kids that always had the green light they want to get more education. That was just fine with me. And Mom and I felt the same way about education. That's why I made things so much easier for us both, that we both had the same values of education.
Yeah. That curiosity, that like exploring things, bettering yourself. Yeah. There's this idea of bettering. The more you learn, the more you're adding to who you are, the more you're growing. And so that's really an ultimate purpose. And then hopefully you do all those things and you're growing in a way that also you can be financially self-sufficient.
Correct.
That's just part one of this exciting conversation, my friends. Click on part two and continue with us on this important journey we like to call the education revolution.